We have a breaking update in the months-long search for the dad who the FBI says killed his 3 daughters, then vanished into the wilderness of Washington state. Authorities have found remains they say could be Travis Decker's. What investigators say they found with the body that makes them believe they finally found him. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Stewart. Authorities say more testing needs to be done to be 100% sure that the remains that they found this week in Washington state are those of Travis Decker's. But by making this announcement, you have to believe they're pretty confident that they have finally found him. The remains were found in a remote wooded area near Leavenworth, Washington. They still need to do DNA testing to confirm it's Decker, but there are some things that have them confident. Now, this development could be the end to a mystery that lasted several months, but this story, let's be frank about this is a loss that will last forever. Decker was the dad to 3 beautiful little girls, 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia. Decker was an Army veteran. He had experience in the outdoors, extensive survival skills that meant that he could be anywhere after he was last seen alive at the end of May. So let's get up to speed on this story, how we got to this point, because it was on May 30th that all of this began, that Decker picked up his 3 daughters for a planned visitation from his ex-wife's house. She was the last person to see him and her girls alive. She said that Decker said, "I'll see you tonight around 8," before he left, but he never returned. His ex-wife then called police. Then days later, on June 2nd, the bodies of Decker's daughters were found at Rock Island Campground in Leavenworth, Washington. The girls had been suffocated. Authorities said that they had multiple separate plastic bags over their heads and cable ties around their bodies, per the local sheriff's office. Deputies say that DNA testing came back and proved that Decker is the only suspect in these murders. His DNA was found on the evidence collected at the scene. When the bodies of those 3 girls were found, the search for this former Army soldier began. These are some of the images that law enforcement first put out, showing what Decker may look like if he were still alive. The U.S. Marshals are offering $20,000 for information leading to his capture. Authorities also put out surveillance images showing Decker prior to allegedly taking his daughters. Now, even though law enforcement searched aggressively for Decker, they weren't able to find him until this week, potentially. In July, they said that they were actually pulling back resources because the trail had gone cold.
But I want to be clear that currently we have no evidence that Travis Decker is alive or dead.
The FBI spoke about finding Decker in terms of years. They recently said that they were making sure that evidence that was collected and secured would be prepared for the next generation of law enforcement, and making sure that the people of the future would have what they would need if they were still searching for Travis Decker, in hopes of finally bringing this story to an end.
We hope to find evidence that will lead us to Travis Decker, or any information regarding the murder of his 3 daughters. By thoroughly searching and documenting the area, we can help prevent the need to review the area in the future by collecting all possible evidence.
But then last night, what could be the break in this case that authorities have been working for months. The local sheriff made the announcement overnight that they had found remains that they think are Travis Decker's. They said that the remains were found a few miles north of the campsite where the girls' bodies were found in June. The remains had clothing similar to what Decker was wearing when he was last seen alive, and there were also, quote, personal items with the remains that has law enforcement confident that it is Travis Decker. That's what the local sheriff told TV station KIRO. Now, those remains will now be tested to confirm a DNA match, and those results could come Friday or even over the weekend. At this point, the sheriff is saying it is a strong possibility it's Travis Decker. Law enforcement, though, is still searching the area where the remains were found today to look for more information to help their case. We may never truly understand what was going through Travis Decker's mind when he killed his 3 little girls. We do know that Decker was homeless at the time of the murders, that he had lived in motels, hotels, campgrounds, and even his car. His ex-wife said that he had suffered from mental health issues. Her attorney told ABC News that Decker's ex-wife believes that the system let Travis Decker down because he lacked the resources to get mental health help. The attorney also said that the Deckers got divorced in 2023, and Travis's mental stability was one of the main reasons why. Decker was allowed to see the girls for 3 hours on Fridays and 8 hours every other weekend as long as he stayed in the area where they lived, per ABC News. Here is part of what Whitney Decker said at a memorial service about her daughters, per KOMO TV.
I'm so thankful for the time that I had with the girls and how the three feelings allowed us to connect when the world slowed down. And it really gave me an inside look into their day. I believe doing this with them allowed them to come into the world with open hearts and kindness.
To help us break this down, joining us is retired NYPD Detective David Sarney. David, always great to have you on Law and Crime. What's your reaction to what the sheriff says is a strong possibility that they found Travis Decker's remains?
Well, thank you for having me. It's news that you're going to find out right now. Your hopes are up there, but I would wait, obviously, until you get the DNA back. But this is one of those cases that we would hope would end with an arrest. But if this ends the way it looks like it may end, you at least have some closures one way or another on this.
Yeah, closure, very big, because I know the last time I had done an episode on this story, the FBI was kind of speaking in terms of years, where they were gathering evidence. So like the next generation of law enforcement, whoever the sheriff is in this county, if they're still looking for Travis Decker, they would have what they need. And then this update comes in overnight. Not to be morbid, but I mean, it's been June 2nd, late May, early June was the last time he was seen alive. Late May was the last time he was seen alive. June 2nd is when the bodies were found. It's been a long summer in Washington State. I guess, what would you believe the condition of the remains to be that they found overnight?
Well, we're looking at it highly decomposed is what they're putting up there. The sheriff spoke about it. Not only that, apparently animals may have gotten to it, to the body. It's not in the same place it would be in probably body parts or something along those lines. But it looks like personal items were left behind at the scene. That's one thing. This area is extremely remote. They had actually helicopter people down to that. I mean, they found the remains via drones. Outside, it was outside, I believe, outside the regular search they were doing. This is like the third, going to be a fourth search at this point. The benefit of this is, this is why technology is beneficial. They were expanding the search again around the area of where the bodies of his daughters were found. And with that, utilizing the cadaver dogs in the beginning, and then they also have the drones. The drones were able to locate something. They have the cadaver dogs, they get down to that location and confirm their body parts. Now, as far as the body is concerned, the decomposed body, you're going to take that scene, you're going to secure the scene, and whatever remains you have, remove the remains, obviously photograph the scene and everything along those lines. And whatever you have left of that remains, you then take it for the DNA analysis, which is what they're doing.
As far as cause of death, officially, we haven't heard what the theory would be. But how, with a badly decomposed body, are you even able to figure out how Travis Decker potentially died?
Well, it's a possibility. So you have, we call them post-mortem artifacts. Animals may have gotten to the body, but if there's something that stands out on the remains, maybe if there's a bullet hole in the skull or something along the lines of that, some damage like that, the ME's office, the coroner, will actually be able to determine the types of injuries that the body may have sustained, whether it being animal, post-mortem, or prior, before this person, if it's Travis's death, prior to his body, they'll be able to determine that based on some items they'll have on the remains. You do a skeleton, skull, things like that.
And as far as this search, because I know in the beginning, it was talked a lot about, because he was in the Army, he had these extensive survival skills, he was a avid outdoorsman, it appears. How much do you think that actually matters, though? Because when you have the FBI that's out and about, could you determine based off of these remains just how long he was alive after these murders happened?
I don't know if that would be possible. Depends on what they found on scene that was left behind. Because the body is one thing. What items or articles did he have at that scene? Was there anything on him that would have helped him sustain as long as he did? When they look at this, the body's found up in the mountainous area. It's about almost a mile away, but high up, around 4,000 feet up. You're dealing with a higher level of altitude. And with that in mind, you won't know how he survived, because unless you find articles or items that are consistent with his extensive stay, that's one thing. But he could have just been hiding out and eventually starved out. We don't know at this point. And that's what I mean by you have to really see what the crime scene, what's left behind by the body at this point. And right now, is it Travis? We don't know, but there was a body on scene that fits relatively items that he had, something that was described by him, his clothing, any personal items he had, and they said, no, the sheriff went through it, I'll go through it again. That gives you at least the possibility that it's Travis. You want to do the DNA, do a confirmatory, but that scene, again, when you talk about scenes like this, how long was he out there? How much did he have? How much would have been taken away by animals, or he hid away? That will be difficult to do unless you're able to really track from where he was downward. And that's the thing. How long? How long was that body up there? We can get an possible determination based on the postmortem artifacts and things like that. Were there maggots in the body? What type of animals are up there that might have used that body for food? So those things come into play. But as far as the length of time and items, whatever may be left on the scene is what you have.
Before we get to the investigative part of it and what authorities know about what happened at that campsite to those 3 little girls, as far as the search, and if this is actually Travis Decker and they were able to find him, and I often talk about just how we can take for granted some things that law enforcement do, and it's just an expectation that they're going to eventually find Travis Decker. But this is a vast area, a wooded area. He had, between the time the girls were taken on May 30th to June 2nd when they were found, if he was fleeing, he would have had quite the head start. What type of, put into perspective what it took to actually find him, and even if there was luck involved, how difficult of a task it was, if this is Travis Decker, to actually find him.
Well, that's the thing. This was, you had the expectation that his flight would be far because I believe that Canada is a place he was going to look to go to. So now you're notifying the Canadian authorities. There's the possibility of somebody over there, descriptions. All these things come into play. But like I said, some things that were very interesting when he left the scene. And I said this, he left the dog on scene. He brought the dog with him. The dog was remaining on scene. He had no other vehicle that we knew of at the time. Leaves the vehicle behind, and he goes off on a trek. The way police are looking at this is he's fleeing the scene. So you're going to do a search from where the bodies are found, the girls are found, and move outward. And they did as far as this is a very hazardous. I won't say hazardous terrain, but it's extremely extensive search. You're talking about a forest. You're talking about any place a person can hide. Travis had some skill. We know he had some skill because of the military. But did he have the materials available to extend his time in the woods to this length? That we don't know. I don't know if that was if he packed his bags. He had a lot of packing with him when he left the scene of the crime. That's something we don't know yet. But the amount of work put in by the investigators and the police, local, state, and then federal, because this was a major undertaking to find somebody. And again, you have a massive area, a massive location where you're trying to do this. So you get what you can. And I really adhere to the fact that we always tend to look at people leaving the scene from a farther distance. And that was why when they looked at the Canada thing, it was like he could be in Canada. And how far could he have gone in those several days? And we thought everywhere. And that's why, when the search happened, they presumed this is the area we're going to search. Search one. They did about 3 extra searches. So they went and rotated. And eventually, it was fortunate, you bring the drones in, bring the cadaver dogs in and brought them in because now it's been an extensive time that he's out there. Is there a chance that he's now dead or his body is somewhere? So that's why you have the cadaver dogs on later part of the investigation.
This story, and certainly there was the mystery about what happened to Travis Decker, which has been a big part of it, and maybe that's come to an end. But just going through this story again, and just what a monster in terms of what he did to these girls. Just in terms of the bags on scene when we learned the cause of death, the ties that were there. I know you in your career, you've dealt with some really, really bad people, but I just think about how premeditated this was. This was, not that would have made it any better if it wasn't, but just, I think it's so important for, as much as the mystery of where was Travis Decker and all of that, just to bring it back to just what this crime scene looked like and what he did is just, it's really hard to comprehend.
Yeah, the terror in these girls, this is their father. this is their father, and I can't imagine what those girls were going through, and there are three of them, and how he was able to get them bound up and then suffocate them. And you don't know the exact time of how the suffocation took place. Was it one after the other? Was it all three? A horrific thing. And that's what we forgot. And we're worried about catching him, and we can look back as to why he was allowed visitation rights when he had a decline in his mental state. He was homeless. Giving him an unsupervised visit. These are things that you have to look back on, and hopefully, we don't have this happen again. You see the telltale signs of an individual. He's on the decline, and the judge determined that he had the right to see his kids unsupervised, and he was supposedly going to go to mental health treatment and all this, and he didn't do it. So that should have been one of the determining factors before you give this guy an unsupervised visit. Are you following up with the program? If he's not following the program, he doesn't have an unsupervised visit, and we wouldn't be talking about this. And that's the end result of this. This person premeditatedly murdered his kids. He bound them and suffocated them. But now you have to look at the back part of this as to why he was able to do that. His kids are his life, apparently. He had a great relationship with the wife to an extent of the relationship with the kids. He always doted on his kids, and he declined. And the wife knew about it. And the reality is, somewhere along the line, that wasn't translated when they did this initial unsupervised visit. I mean, this was and that's where it all comes down to. The murders were premeditated, but the problem is, why was this person, given who is homeless and a declining mental health condition, allowed to see his kids without following up on the program that he was mandated to do? And there's your other thing. The extracurricular aspect of the flight, direction of flight and things, that's after the fact. And police are going to be involved in it. The police were involved. I mean, that's what it comes down to. But this is a family issue that should have been handled properly by the court system in that aspect. And, we have to keep saying that. The reality is, do you give parents who are in a mental decline, who have no residence, and are not following the program you've suggested to them, should you give them an unauthorized visit? And it should have been no. And you wouldn't have the situation altogether. These three kids may have been stayed alive.
And that's the thing, is it's just, and we've talked about cases. I mean, sadly, there are a lot of times these domestic cases, and I'm sure for people who are working in the system, it is easy to look at hindsight and say, why didn't you see this ahead of time? But I also look at, to your point, he was homeless. The reason, according to his wife's lawyer, is the big reason for the divorce was his declining mental state. I mean, there were concerns, and she seems like someone who really trusted the system. And, we talk about mental health resources not being available. And it's this question of, and there's a lot of cases where, okay, we're going to put them in mental health resources. Okay, that's great. But then it's like, how do you actually get someone to follow? And that's kind of my question for you as someone who's seen this. And I know it's kind of this question that'll, I don't know if we'll ever find the answer, but it's like, okay, so someone's been, we're going to have them go through mental health resources. Great. That sounds good. If they don't want to go, how do you get them to actually go? And if they don't go, how do you I know you can't force someone to do something, but in this case, it seemed like there was just a lot of red flags there in hindsight.
Yeah, that's the problem. And again, it comes back to the whole thing. I've seen cases where there's guardianships involved that they have to show they're going to the program. There should have been conferral if they're going to say, go to mental health services. And if you don't get it and you don't want it, you're not going to go. That's the end result. And we can't force people. There's not he wasn't a criminal, didn't commit any crimes at this point. You can't mandate him to go, and you can't force him to go. But when you have that ability and authority within the system to deny him access to his kids unsupervised, utilize that. And there's a guardianship. I've seen this before when it comes to divorce cases and they have a guardian when it comes to the kids, and kids are most important in any type of a situation like this. You have to worry about the kids. You're not worried about the feelings of both parents. Are the kids being treated properly, and are they being treated well by both sides? Because we've seen this back and forth a lot of times when visitation comes back, one parent curses the other parent out at the end. That's a problem. This way, the criminal aspect was an after effect. This domestic family thing should have been handled. You had a family. The wife is telling you he has a problem. You know he has a problem. Yet nowhere along the line did you stop and say, you do not get unsupervised visits until we see mandated documentation that you've been going to a program by a doctor, by a psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever it would be. Then you get the right to have that visit with a guardian available, which means a ward of the court will be with them. And that's the important part. You know, they don't want family court and like do not want to break up families. They always tend to relegate the custody back to one parent or the other. But sometimes parents shouldn't have responsibility for their kids, their children, and that's a big thing. He was not responsible for a position to work. He's a vet, and I'm going to not go about the opinions of mental health of vets because I think that's extremely lacking. And that's a thing. You get him the help he needs. He's a veteran. He deserves that. Get him the help he needs. But on that other flip side, make sure that you have the documentations before you let him see his kids. Because here's the thing: is how long was he thinking about murdering his children?
Right.
I mean, he brought zip ties, bags. Where is this coming from? You don't know because he's homeless. He doesn't have any residence. There's no place to really he's staying. You can't interview neighbors, friends, because you don't have a place where he's staying on a regular basis. So we have to look at this. He doesn't have the right yet to visit his kids unsupervised because the wife said he has mental issues. He's problematic. He has PTSD. There should be mandatory help, and you have to document it. And they didn't do any of that. And to give him the custody of the kids, this is, whether or not the judges or the court system will ever feel the pain of this, they should understand what they did, or what was done, and to avoid this ever happening again. But time and time again, we see this. We've seen it, older cases, newer cases, and it continues on. You have to really assess the dealings of a parent during a divorce and how they're handling it. Are they living, did they check the house? That's another thing. You do this with ACS, with Administration of Children's Services in New York. You check the house and you do a family visit. The wife is responsible. She's got the kids. She has legal custody of the kids at the residence. Okay, you want to visit? Let's go see where you live before we do that. Let's have a guardianship go there. Ward of the court, go see where he resides. It's not valid. You can't have an unsupervised visit. There's your answer. If you check on the parent who wants to have that visitation, who's unsupervised, have the courts check it before you let them do that.
Yeah, it's just, I think that's part of this story, especially if this is Travis Decker. That mystery is over, but I mean, the loss in this story just is something that will go on forever. And just, I think that's the important thing to kind of bring the attention back to is to remember what he did. And it's just so awful. Retired NYPD Detective David Sarney, thank you for joining us. I know a lot of developing aspects of this story. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll see. Hopefully it results in the best result.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.